Hello, hello. This week we're going to be talking about the Spanish American War. But before we get into the Spanish American War, it's important that we talk about the shift in the United States' mindset in the late 1800s that leads to it getting involved in this conflict with Spain. Okay? And we know after the Civil War, the United States is in a rebuilding period, right? It's just trying to keep to itself and rebuild what was destroyed during the Civil War, which was a lot of cities in the South and the United States' economy overall. Well, towards the end of the late 1800s, the United States' economy experiences a large period of industrialization and a rise in big business that we already discussed. And that leads to the United States becoming a more wealthy and powerful country than it's ever been. Okay. And this is going to lead to it wanting to become a world superpower and keep up with the other nations in the world whose economies are growing during this time. So it's going to lead to the United States going from practicing isolationism to practicing what is known as imperialism. Okay. Imperialism is the concept of a stronger nation taking advantage of a weaker nation or exerting its control and power over a weaker nation. Okay, and that's what the United States begins to do. Okay, both economically and militarily throughout the 1800s, and that's going to ultimately lead to. It's going to be one of the reasons the United States gets involved in the Spanish-American War. Okay, so America, we know, is emerging as a world power, right? By the end of the 1800s, like I said, its economy is growing more powerful than ever. The government is becoming stronger. Okay, it's fully recovering from the setback, which was the Civil War. Okay. And like I said, imperialism, it's simply the policy by which strong nations extend their political, military, and economic control over weaker nations in the world. Okay, so there are stronger nations in the country in the late 1800s when compared to other more underdeveloped areas of the world. So the United States, for instance, it's going to be considered a more powerful nation during this time. It's fully recovered from the Civil War. Its government is much stronger. Okay? Its economy is much stronger. Okay? The United States is becoming a very wealthy and a very powerful nation when compared to the rest of the world during this time. And then we have those world powers over in Europe. Okay, their economies are growing as well. Okay, their governments are getting stronger. Their militaries are becoming stronger, and their economies are making more and more money. And during this time, it's mainly due to them exerting their influence over weaker nations. Okay. So America is going to move towards practicing imperialism because it doesn't want to be passed up in terms of wealth and power by all the other countries in Europe that are exerting their influence over weaker nations throughout the world. They're exerting their political control over them because these weaker nations, they don't have strong governments. They're exerting their military control over them. They're building bases throughout Asia and throughout Africa, okay, for their military to be stationed at. And they begin exerting their control over weaker nations and trading products that are produced in their country to the weaker nations, thus making all these countries in the world that are practicing imperialism more powerful. And America, well, during the late 1800s, they were keeping to themselves before, but they realized if they exert their influence over weaker nations, it could lead to them making more money and thus becoming more powerful. Okay, and America, we know, doesn't want other countries to overpower them. Okay, so why at first is it so easy for America to practice isolationism and rebuild after the Civil War? Well, if we take a look at where America is located compared to the rest of the world's superpowers over in Europe, during this time, America is in a position to keep to itself, right, and focus on its building of power internally, right, without relying on other countries or other areas of the world, right, or interfering or getting into competition with other countries in the world like Europe. Okay, and it's mainly able to do this due to it being the whole way across the Atlantic Ocean from all those other world powers over in Europe. Okay, so it kind of keeps to itself, rebuilds after the Civil War, becomes a powerful nation. Then it's ready to exert its influence over other areas of the world and become even more powerful. All right, so what are the main reasons countries practice imperialism? To get a little bit more in depth, well, the first reason that countries exert their influence over weaker countries is due to the concept of nationalism, right? All these countries, including the United States, have the power to, or excuse me, have the desire to become the most powerful country in the world by ruling over many other countries. So we see Britain, for instance. It comes into control of colonies all throughout the world because it has a strong sense of pride in itself as a country. It feels that its culture is the best. Its way of doing things is the best. Its government is the best. Its language is the best. Other traditional cultural practice that are done within the country of Britain are the best. Right? So Britain is very prideful. It feels it should be the most powerful country in the world. So how does it go about becoming a world superpower? Well, it begins to exert its influence over other countries, right, or other areas of the world. And thus it comes into control of a lot of colonies throughout the world, including the American colonies for a time. And it becomes a very powerful country. It achieves its goal. Okay? Other countries like the United States, and France, and Spain, they too begin exerting their influence over weaker nations, okay, in the late 1800s. And Italy and Germany are two other countries that kind of join this race for power. They were recently unified in the late 1800s. They want to prove that their country is one of the world's superpowers, so they begin exerting their power over weaker areas of the world as well. Okay, because they believe, all those countries believe that their country's culture is the best, therefore their country should be the most powerful country in the world. Okay. And for economic reasons, countries begin practicing imperialism. They want to use other countries' resources to make money off of. So, for instance, we have Britain, going off the example of Britain, they're going to come into control of the diamond mines in South Africa. Okay? Many countries in Africa are underdeveloped nations. They don't have powerful governments. They don't have powerful militaries. It's very easy for a country like Britain to come into control of valuable resources throughout Africa. So once again, Africa and the African countries, they have no strong government to protect them. They have no strong military to protect them from a country like Britain coming down and exerting its influence over the area and taking control of its valuable resources. Other countries are also going to take advantage of the cheap labor that other areas of the world have to offer outside of their country. And they also use these other areas, especially China, as a market for their goods, a market to sell their goods. If you think about the Chinese population, an easy way for your country to make a lot of money, since China has such a large population during this time, is simply produce a good that a lot of people living over in China need, and then people over in China are going to buy that good from your country, and you're going to make a lot of money, okay, because there's a large population or market to sell that good to. And some countries are going to exert their influence over other countries to spread their religion. So if we think about Spain, they wish to spread Catholicism throughout South America because they're a Catholic nation. We think about France spreading the Catholic religion throughout Africa. Okay, so some of these countries simply want to exert their influence over other areas for the purpose of spreading their country's official religion. And then we have ideological reasons that other countries are going to exert their influence over other areas of the world. Okay. So, for instance, Britain, Spain, France, and a lot of those countries, other countries over in Europe, are going to claim that their race was better. It was more superior to that of other areas in the world, like to the races of Africa and the Chinese cultures, or excuse me, the cultures in Africa and the Chinese cultures. And they're going to claim that they're on a mission to civilize them and make them a better civilization through coming into contact with them and spreading their cultural practices to these areas throughout China and Africa. And the fifth big reason for imperialism is that people still have that desire to explore from the time of European exploration. Okay, people want to explore new lands in Africa for mapping and new lands in Asia for purposes of putting them on a map. And also, they're exploring to find more valuable resources that their countries can make more money off of. Okay, so if they find diamonds, gold, or silver, that's going to lead to their countries instantly becoming more wealthy. Or if they find a market or a group of people somewhere in the world that desire a certain good that the country can produce, that will lead to the country becoming more wealthy because that country is going to be selling that group of people that good that they want, and thus leading to them making more money.